Alright, so the Eagles have some massive decisions to make before the playoffs, as Saquon Barkley has the chance to do something that is absolutely historic against his former team this week, while Jalen Hurts could return from his concussion and knock off the rust ahead of the playoffs. That is, however, if they do actually get the chance to play in Week 18, so what's the latest on that whole situation? Meanwhile, the Eagles got a lot of guys with a chip on their shoulder, including right guard Mekhi Becton, who has managed to shut down his doubters, while Micah Parsons made some rather interesting and somewhat delusional comments about the Cowboys' loss to the Eagles, and who could the Birds possibly face in the first round of the playoffs? Well, we're going to talk about that and all the other latest Eagles news starting right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Philly Fan 21 channel. If you're new, I'm Evan and I cover all things Philadelphia Eagles. And we are somehow already in the final week of the NFL regular season, so obviously there's still plenty of storylines around the league that have yet to be wrapped up, and of course there's also still some playoff positioning that has yet to be determined as we enter this final week of games. However, for the Eagles, everything for them is pretty much set in stone, as their blowout win over Dallas on Sunday, of course, allowed them to clinch the NFC's division title and also ensured that they would at least be the 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. And while I still technically had a small chance to get the 1 seed immediately after their win, that came to an end just a few hours later when the Vikings won their game against the Green Bay Packers by a mere 2 points. So no matter what happens this Sunday for the Birds, they are locked into that number 2 seed. So even though there are still storylines this week ahead of the Eagles matchup with the Giants, which we'll get into later, it's kind of hard to not look ahead to the playoffs, at least a little bit. And the good news for the Birds just a few weeks away from Wildcard Weekend is that history is on their side, as their win over Dallas on Sunday marked their 13th win of the season, making this the Eagles' 4th season in franchise history with at least that many wins. And in those other 3 years that the Birds were able to do this, they wound up going on to play in the Super Bowl. So fingers crossed, if the trend continues and history repeats itself, that would mean that the Eagles are set to go on another Super Bowl run this year. But obviously, that's no guarantee, and while a Super Bowl is no doubt the ultimate goal, the Eagles still just have a lot of work to do before they can even think about that. And something much more relevant is the Eagles' possible matchups for Wildcard Weekend, which after Week 17's games has been narrowed down to just 2 possible teams, and those teams are the Green Bay Packers and the rival Washington Commanders. And whatever happens this week will obviously determine who the Eagles do end up playing. Now, if the season were to end today, they would face Jordan Love and the Packers, as they currently are the 7th seed while Washington sits in the 6th spot, and if the Packers lose this week to the Bears, or if Washington beats the Cowboys, then Green Bay will 100% be the Birds matchup in the first round. That being said though, if Washington were to lose and the Packers win, then the Commanders will fall back down to the 7th seed, and they'll be the Eagles' first round matchup. So either way, I think it'll be a tough game, as both Green Bay and Washington are very good teams. Now, in all likelihood, it'll probably end up being the Packers, because I just don't see the Commanders losing to Dallas, but honestly, no matter who it winds up being, I'm just super confident that the Eagles are going to be able to get the job done. And there's many reasons for that, so I'm not going to name them all, but one thing that I do want to highlight that I think makes this team pretty special comes from @RNB215 on Twitter, as he pointed out that this Eagles team is full of guys who have a chip on their shoulder, whether it's the guys he mentioned like Mekhi Becton, Zack Baun, A.J. Brown, and Saquon Barkley, who were essentially given up on or let go by other teams. And then to take it even further, you also got guys like Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, Devontae Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Cam Jurgens, Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and the list continues to go on, who have all been disrespected or doubted at some point in recent history, and probably have a bit of a chip on their shoulder as well.
It's the whole team!
You got to imagine that having a bunch of guys like that all on the same team that have been discounted or doubted at some point has got to only help, because it just adds that extra level of motivation and a determined mindset to the locker room, which can be very valuable. I mean, just look at that 2017 team, because they obviously had that exact thing going for them, and they ended up going on to win it all. So it's awesome to see a similar thing now in 2024 as the Birds look to go on another Super Bowl run. And there's a couple guys who I think probably deserve a little bit of an extra special shout out, starting with linebacker Zack Baun, who of course in his 4 years with the Saints, he really wasn't anything more than just a rotational edge defender and a special teams player, but then obviously he's now come to Philly, and in his first year he made the switch to inside linebacker, and he has had a true breakout season and become an absolute star at that inside linebacker position. And he's also done something historic, as Baun is the only player in NFL history to have 150 plus tackles and 5 plus forced fumbles in a single season. So that's obviously just absolutely insane, and I think there's no question that the Saints are kicking themselves for what they did letting Baun get away way and not using him correctly. And also, I think there's very much an argument to be made that Baun should be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, but that's a whole different argument. And then another guy who I think deserves a special shout out is Mekhi Becton. As you can see him here, rather emotional, coming off the field after the Eagles had clinched the NFC East on Sunday, and Mailata said he cried tears of joy in the locker room afterwards. Because, I mean, Becton's just one of those guys that has been through a lot to get to this point, as of course he started his career with the Jets at left tackle after being drafted in the first round in 2020, and he looked promising in his rookie season, but was quickly written off after he missed the next 2 seasons with injuries and struggled in 2023 when he was finally able to return. And you could tell even last year that Becton had had enough of the disrespect and was motivated to get better and prove people wrong.
The first round pick, a lot of praise, and this guy had the potential, and last year was different. Do you feel like people have kind of written you off already?
Yeah, and I don't understand why, but it's all good though. I'm gonna make them eat their words.
I definitely think it's safe to say that Becton has made the doubters eat their words, as he's had a true breakout season in his first year in Philly after transitioning to right guard, and he's been a big reason for the success of the Eagles' offensive line and also Saquon Barkley's historic year as well. And of course, he has also greatly contributed to the Eagles winning the division, which is something that he never experienced with the Jets. So, I mean, you gotta love Mekhi Becton, man. And shout out to him for the job he's done this year, especially after switching to a new position. And speaking of switching things up, how about the Eagles making the change this past week to go back to Jake Elliott for kickoffs? Because that switch clearly paid off, and in multiple ways, as not only did the Cowboys not really get many opportunities to return kicks because Elliott was doing a great job putting it deep in the end zone and in multiple spots, but it also possibly could have helped Jake when it came to kicking it through the uprights, as he was 7 for 7 on his kicks on Sunday, including 2 field goals and 5 extra points. So that's definitely a great sign as we get closer to the playoffs, especially with all the struggles that Jake has had this year, and I'm honestly hoping that the Eagles stick with Elliott on kickoffs moving forward. But now, getting back to that game against the Cowboys, in which the Birds of course destroyed their NFC East division rival, you gotta hear what Micah Parsons said after the game, because his attempts to diminish how bad Dallas got destroyed in this one were just so funny.
You look at their play, they had 2 big runs and 3 good deep shots. Other than that, we made them earn it, and you take away the scoreboard. It was about 5 plays that decided this game. And you hate to say that because it's a lot of football, but the 2 deep shots to Devontae Smith and the one to A.J. Brown, and then also Devontae on that slant, for the most part, we were making them earn it.
Look, as funny as it is that he literally just said, oh, well, if you take away the scoreboard, it wasn't that bad, I do honestly get what he was trying to say, because he was just making the point that it was really the big plays from the Eagles offense that killed them, and without those, the game is a little bit different. But that said, do not let Parsons' comments fool you, because this game was not close in any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't just those 5 plays or whatever that decided the game, because, whatever way you look at it, this was just utter domination by the Eagles. But for the Cowboys, they're kind of in shambles right now, as they just got blown out. Eagles fans were taunting them pretty bad throughout that entire game, and they got nothing to play for to close the season out, as they've of course missed the playoffs. So if you're an Eagles fan, you gotta love that. But moving on, the Birds actually do have some pretty huge decisions to make as they near their regular season finale against the Giants. So don't worry, we're gonna get into that in just a minute, but real quick, I do want to say, if you are enjoying this video and you don't want to miss any other Eagles coverage or content just like this coming throughout the rest of this season and also moving into the playoffs, then make sure you guys subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you're notified instantly when one of these videos is uploaded. Trust me, you guys are not going to want to miss any of the Eagles coverage or content I got coming on this channel. I cover the Birds pretty much daily here, so if you want to stay up to date on all the latest Eagles news, this is the spot. So again, subscribe and turn on notifications, and also drop a like to show some support. Let's see if we can get to 600 likes today. And now, with all that being said, let's get back into the video. So even though the Eagles obviously don't have anything to play for seeding wise in their season finale against the Giants, there are still a few major storylines to follow heading into the game. Now, one piece of news that we just got is that the Eagles will be wearing their all black uniforms and helmets for the matchup, which is just awesome because I've been waiting for that all year. But obviously, the bigger storyline everyone is following is Saquon Barkley's potential chase for Eric Dickerson's all-time single season rushing yards record. As of course, Barkley currently sits over 2,000 rush yards on the season, and he needs just 101 more to break Dickerson's record of 2,105, which is very much within the realm of possibility. And that's not mentioning the fact that if Barkley were to break the record, then he would do it it against his former team in the New York Giants, who of course, as captured on video by Hard Knocks, let him walk this past offseason in somewhat disrespectful fashion, might I add. So for him to break the all-time record against them would just be pure poetry and just a full circle moment. That being said though, whether he'll actually get the chance to do it or not remains to be seen. As of course, with this game holding no meaning record-wise for the Eagles, it's likely that Philly could choose to just rest their starters and get ready for the playoffs. And on Monday, Nick Sirianni made it clear that he had not made a decision on whether Saquon and the starters would play yet.
Yeah, still not there. And then, obviously I gave the players off today. I'll always inform our players of things first, but still sorting through things right now at this particular moment.
Yeah, so there you go. Sirianni has not made a decision yet. However, on Tuesday, Nick Sirianni was on WIP radio where he did say something that made it seem like even if he doesn't decide to play the starters, he still could play Saquon in hopes that he does break the record.
You take into a lot to account. Again, it's how do I, what's the best thing for the team, and then also what's the best for the individuals that are going for the record. If you think back a couple years ago to 2021, Smitty was going for the rookie receiving record. I think he was going to break Deshaun Jackson's rookie receiving record, and we thought that was, and everybody else was resting, but we wanted or everyone else was, whatever it was. We didn't play some other guys in that game, but we went and got him that record. And so every situation's a little different. Not saying one way or the other of how that's going to play out, or even that I've made a decision yet, but. Again, I got to tell the guys first when I do come to that decision, and I'll let you guys know. But a lot goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's certainly interesting because, like you said, if you remember back to 2021 when Devontae Smith had a chance to break a record, even though he rested the rest of the starters, he still let Devontae play in that game so that he had the chance to break it. So I guess it would make sense for him to do something similar with Saquon here. That being said, though, obviously still nothing is set in stone, and we're just going to have to wait and see whether Barkley actually does get the chance to break the record or not. And you can say a similar thing about Jalen Hurts and his chances of playing in this game, as the Birds have another dilemma here with Hurts, as he, of course, missed pretty much the last 2 games now with a concussion, and he's still actually in the concussion protocol as well. That being said, Hurts' timeline to return would suggest that he would easily be ready to go this week if need be. However, again, with the Eagles not having anything to play for, then there's a decent chance that we don't see Jalen in this one. The flip side of that, though, is that Hurts would then enter the playoffs having essentially not played in 3 straight games, so you risk there being some rust there, which obviously you can't really afford in the playoffs, and that's why some people have suggested that he just play a series or 2 to get some in-game action before the playoffs start. But once again, this is simply a decision that Nick Sirianni has not made yet.
Yeah, you take everything into account. Try to do the best thing for the team and try to do the best thing for each individual player as well. And so that's where we'll be. No decisions yet on anything.
I don't know, man. I mean, personally, I think both of these dilemmas are pretty tough. Because on one hand, I think it'd be nice to see Hurts and have him play so he's not rusty going into the playoffs. And also, obviously, I would love to see Saquon break the all-time record and it would just be amazing. That all said, though, the most important thing is that the Eagles give themselves the best chance to win it all as they enter the playoffs. And putting all these guys out there on Sunday obviously has a risk of them getting injured. Not to mention that having some late season rest after having their bye week all the way back in week 5 could be very beneficial as they enter the playoffs. So, I don't know, man. I see a case for both sides, but what do you guys think? Should the Eagles play their starters and Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts in their regular season finale against the Giants, or should they just rest everyone? You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And also, while you're at it, again, make sure you guys subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any other Eagles coverage or content coming throughout the rest of the season and moving into the playoffs. And also, again, make sure you guys drop a like to show some support because it really does help me out a ton. Again, let's see if we can get to 600 likes today. And if you want to watch another Eagles video recapping their win over the Cowboys, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.